I'm really happy to be here. I recognize some faces. I'm delighted to meet others. And I'm coming to you from the traditional homelands of several Coast Salish peoples, but in particular where I live, it's the Semiahmoo First Nation. My purpose as a Baha'i is to meet and greet, share faith with people of all goodwill, and to work together in our communities here in Surrey and everywhere we live. We need each other, we support each other, while yet remaining true to our own spiritual path. So, thank you for inviting me to share something about my path with you today. In the annual Baha'i calendar, there are actually three occasions when we dedicate celebration to the Bab. One is his birth. The second is this one that's happening on May 22nd, which is the declaration of his revelation and mission. And then the third is the date of his execution and martyrdom. My own journey began as a Christian child, where I learned about Moses and Jesus, and then I continued for 19 years practicing Raj Yoga, learning, raising my children as yogis. And as more and more came, they also learned about Lord Jesus and Moses and the prophets and Lord Krishna. So I could feel the divine inspiration in each of these figures, the same power of the spirit. But I also recognized that they each had a sort of distinctive feeling about them, a kind of signature vibration. So as I began to explore the nature of the Bab, my first question was really, what did he feel like? What was it like to be in his presence? And we do have some recorded impressions. I'll just read you three of them. One description says, the gentle, the youthful, and irresistible person of the Bab, matchless in his meekness, imperturbable in his serenity, magnetic in his utterance. And then the first Western historian of this Babi movement that was started by the Bab was Count Gobineau, a French diplomat. And he wrote just after the passing of the Bab in 1865, he wrote with enthusiasm about the Bab's saintliness, loftiness of his ideals, his charm, his eloquence, and the astonishing power of his words over friends and foes. Then we're going to hear today a bit about the story of Mullah Husayn, who was the first to recognize the elevated station of the Bab, the divine station of the Bab. And there's a little bit about Mullah Husayn. As he walked and pondered his own search, he came face to face with a youth of striking appearance, a young man who was gentle and gracious, whose turban of green proclaimed his descent from the Prophet Muhammad. This young man greeted him with great kindness. Mullah Husayn was amazed and overwhelmed by the warmth of this unexpected welcome. It was the courtesy coupled with the dignified mien of this young Siyyid, this descendant of Muhammad, the Prophet, which particularly impressed him. So then, personally, the second thing I wanted to know was, what was it like in his time? What was the historical context and the conditions? And I was surprised to learn that in many cultures, it was a period of great expectation. So we have just a short video. Are you able to show that, Rachel?
Yes, this is the roots of the Bahá'í Faith, correct?
Yeah, it's just a minute and 50 seconds.
Okay.
Just as all of the world's major religions have dawned in the East, the Bahá'í Faith had its roots in Iran, which once was known as Persia. It was the middle of the 19th century. An air of religious fervor permeated Christian, Jewish, and Islamic countries around the world. Predictions by Bible scholars sparked a new wave of evangelism and the birth of Adventist denominations. Thousands flocked to the Middle East to await the appearance of the Messiah. Meanwhile, in Shiraz, Iran, a young merchant quietly proclaimed that he was the bearer of a revelation from God, referring to himself as the Bab, meaning the gate. He explained that he was the forerunner of a divine teacher greater than himself, who would soon appear and bring about a new age of unity and peace. The Bab's spiritual and moral teachings spread rapidly throughout Persian society. He promoted the upliftment of women and the poor, and encouraged universal education and the study of science, themes considered radical in a society still steeped in centuries-old traditions. Perceiving the progressive new faith as a threat, religious and civil authorities.
Yes, so religious and civil authorities, similarly to how Jesus had been harassed by powerful figures that thought he was a worldly threat, he was executed. Now, ultimately, over the course of only 6 years, the Bab would reveal hundreds of essays and books, attracting literally tens and tens of thousands of followers. His writings included commentaries on the Quran, moving to philosophical commentaries that gave new meanings to such important concepts as God, religion, the nature of prophets, heaven and hell, and resurrection. And finally, his writings turned to a legislative stage where he combined mystical and historical principles concerning religion and supporting the essential nobility and progress of human souls. But of greatest importance, perhaps, throughout all of his teaching and writing was his affirmation that his role was to prepare the way, to prepare the people to recognize and receive a messianic figure who would follow him, and to whom he referred mysteriously as him whom God shall make manifest, meaning the person of Baha'u'lláh. But today we're focusing on that first night in 1844, when Mullah Husayn, who was a dedicated, scholarly, devoted, spiritual seeker, found his way to Shiraz and met this mysterious figure and entered into the home of the Bab, ascending to an upper room where they took tea. And we can learn a lot from the personal story of Mullah Husayn, because he, like us, are seekers. And so Mullah Husayn's greatest desire in his own spiritual search was that when he found the one he was looking for, he would be able to receive a commentary, an explanation of the Surah of Joseph, which is chapter 12 in the Quran. And as the night proceeded, he didn't dare put the question, but suddenly the Bab launched upon such a commentary. And I say launch because I want to read what Mullah Husayn said about that moment. He, the Bab, took up his pen and with incredible rapidity revealed the entire first chapter of his commentary on the Surah of Joseph. The overpowering effect of the manner in which he wrote was heightened by the gentle intonation of his voice, which accompanied his writing. Not for one moment did he interrupt the flow of the verses which streamed from his pen. Not once did he pause till the entire commentary was finished. And then Mullah Husayn says, I sat enraptured by the magic of his voice and the sweeping force of his revelation. So this is how part of the nighttime progressed. Bob was announcing a new age of humanity to be brought about by an unprecedented outpouring of revelation, both by himself and the far greater manifestation to follow. So I'd like to return to the account of Mullah Husayn, of what it was like for him to be exposed to this first night of revelation. This revelation, so suddenly and impetuously thrust upon me, came as a thunderbolt, which for a time seemed to have benumbed my faculties. I was blinded by its dazzling splendor and overwhelmed by its crushing force. Excitement, joy, awe, and wonder stirred the depths of my soul. Predominant among these emotions was a sense of gladness and strength, which seemed to have transfigured me. Now, just a time out, I want to share with you that I served for a time as a guide in the archives, the museum where artifacts and relics are preserved from the early days of Baha'i history. And inside that museum, I often showed pilgrims the sword of Mullah Husayn, which was large, as in my memory, it was longer than a meter. And he once used this sword to fell a small tree in just one blow. But what's important is to understand that Mullah Husayn was petite. He was a little guy, and he had been known for the weakness of his constitution. He was sickly as well as small of stature. So how did he find the force to yield that sword? And we'll go back to his story of the night of the declaration. How feeble and impotent, how dejected and timid I had felt previously. Then I could neither write nor walk, so tremulous were my hands and feet. Now, however, the knowledge of his revelation had galvanized my being. I felt possessed of such courage and power that were the world with all its peoples and potentates to rise against me, I would alone and undaunted withstand their onslaught. So just another time out. So the thing about revelation is that it throws light on what we thought we knew. It reveals different answers to questions like, who am I? Where am I? What is this place? Where is it going? What is it for? So transforming everything with a new understanding, a new vision of what is heaven and what is earth. So no wonder Mullah Husayn was in shock. And I'll conclude his story by sharing what he said as he emerged the morning after the revelation of the Bab. The universe seemed but a handful of dust in my grasp. I seemed to be the voice of Gabriel personified, calling unto all mankind, awake, for lo, the morning light has broken. Arise, for his cause is made manifest. The portal of his grace is opened wide. Enter therein, O peoples of the world. So we see in his story the effect on Mullah Husayn from witnessing this night, this declaration of the Bab. It brought him a sense of great hope for humanity, that all things are possible for the divine, that despite all evidence to the contrary, humanity is redeemable, It will achieve progress unequaled at any time in its past, and it will ultimately attain its unity and peace. Following that night, 18 disciples were gradually, spontaneously drawn to the Bab, some in sleep, others while awake, some through fasting and prayer, others through dreams and visions. They discovered the object of their quest and were enlisted under the banner of a newborn faith. In all, the ministry of the Bab was short, intense, tragic, heroic, and transformative, preparing for the advent of Baha'u'lláh. And so we're moving towards a piece of music. After his execution, the body of the Bab and the disciple who was hung with him, and their bodies, 750 rifles, they were shot together. So the Bab and his beloved disciple are buried together as one. And these remains were hidden for half a century from the persecutors of this new faith. And they were finally entombed in a beautiful white shrine, topped with a golden globe, a golden, not globe, a dome that is situated on Mount Carmel, looking across the bay at the shrine of Baha'u'lláh, for whom the Bab lived and gave his life. So in our closing music from this section, you'll see the shrine of the Bab set in the midst of terraced gardens, a whole kilometer of gardens that go up the mountain. And its beautiful stately appearance is such that it's been called the Queen of Carmel, the Queen of Mount Carmel.